I was so tired and irritable, and I couldn't sleep, and I had brain fog, and I cried a lot. And I thought, well, this is just the stress of everything I'm going through. But then when my best friend said to me, you know what? Your personality has changed. I already thought, oh my God, I'm in perimenopause.
Welcome to the Mastering Mindfulness Institute. Here, we explore how food can become your greatest teacher and your body can become your wisest guide. I'm your host, Gina Warfel, helping you build a deeper connection with your food and body. Let's begin our journey together. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to explore a topic that makes such a huge difference on your health, your happiness, your cravings, your weight, and really makes a big difference on whether you feel like you're flying high and doing great in life or if you feel like you're falling off a cliff. And this is a topic that I think is so important that I really don't talk about a lot, but I see it's influenced myself and a lot of other people, and could be the thing that determines your happiness, your self-trust with food, and that is hormones. Our hormones are so powerful with how we think, how we feel, how we relate to life, how we eat. And so we can't talk about the relationship with your food, the relationship with your body, and understanding it without talking about hormones. But instead of me talking about it today, I'm so excited that I brought in a true hormone expert. I have Lorraine Maita, and it is such a blessing to have her here because not only is she a triple board certified and award-winning physician, but some people call her the miracle worker. And so it is such a blessing to have her. She's not just somebody on Instagram who calls themselves a hormone expert. She's truly one of the best in the industry. And she's the CEO and the founder of the Feel Good Again Institute, Vibrance for Life, and How to Live Younger. And so I'm so grateful to have her here so we can pick her brain, understand how our hormones can communicate with us, and let us know like what our bodies are really needing. Lorraine, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here because you know what? My hormones derailed me. I mean, I made a mess of my life because of my hormones.
Tell
And
me about that. Let's
oh
hear
my
about
God,
that.
I used to live across the street from the World Trade Center, and I was going through perimenopause at the time, and I was in a workplace where absolutely every woman there was either going through menopause or perimenopause. It was a hotbed of emotions. The company was downsizing, they were restructuring, they were reorganizing. I had 35 sites across the country and I was international. And then my mother and my brother got ill. I mean, so serious that I had to take time off. And I said, I have to choose between my work or my work or my family. And obviously I chose my family, but I was so tired and irritable and I couldn't sleep and I had brain fog, and 9/11 happened, and I cried a lot, and I thought, well, this is just the stress of everything I'm going through. But then when my best friend said to me, you know what, your personality has changed, I already thought, oh my God, I'm in perimenopause.
Oh, yeah.
And, people didn't talk about it back then. This is back in, 2000. So no, people didn't talk about it then. Now everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
So I learned from the greats in New York, and I went from doctor to doctor, and they all only had one way of doing things, and their way just didn't work for me. I'm into personalized medicine, and I'm writing a book, and it's going to be about all the different mistakes that people have made, because I get the people who either failed hormones or afraid of hormones, or the hormones didn't work right for them. So I learned from many, many, many different people. So I have a lot of different tools to help people. And that's how I got my life back. And I said, you know what? I'm going to dedicate my career to helping other women to avoid the mistakes that I made, because I just up and quit my job, and it was like a very prestigious job.
Wow.
But it gave me my calling.
That's really beautiful. I would imagine that you see a lot of women every day and the contrast in their experience with life. And this is very timely because just a few days ago I had a conversation with a girlfriend and she said, Gina, I felt like I was going into a crisis. Like, what is wrong with me? Because everything in her life was actually going really well. She has a great job, she has a lot of friends, she has a lot of hobbies. Her health is overall pretty good. And she's like, I could not figure out why I was crying every day and what was wrong with me. And she said, huh, then I realized perimenopause and hormones.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that we look at things like hormones and doctors as like this physical thing, but in many ways, like it could be a miracle or truly saving somebody's life when they understand if that is what's really happening with them. What kind of things do you see like in your practice that women are experiencing or symptoms that they're having?
Well, there are over 70 symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, but the main symptoms people come to me with are, well, I don't feel like myself anymore.
Mm,
Gaining weight no matter what I try. All the things that I used to do don't work anymore. I'm tired all the time. I can't sleep. I have brain fog and I'm very moody. One minute I'm happy, one minute I'm crying, one minute I'm anxious, one minute I'm depressed. And some women even complain of rage.
mm.
And in perimenopause, the periods can become irregular. Menopause, same symptoms, except in perimenopause, you can still have a period and you can still get pregnant, believe it or not, you can still get pregnant. And in menopause, that the definition of that is one whole year without a period.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is that like when women come in? Like, how is this really impacting their lives? Like, I wonder sometimes I see a lot of women who have these cravings that are so bad and they're working on rebuilding their self-trust, but sometimes I wonder, like, is there an underlying hormone issue that could be driving it? What are some of the different experiences that women are going through that might actually be hormones and they don't even realize it?
Well, when you're tired and you're not sleeping, you make bad choices, right?
Yeah.
Do you notice that? You make bad choices. Also, the hormones are in perimenopause, they're fluctuating. Estrogen is high and it goes from high to low. I mean, I literally had a woman whose estrogen was over 800. I mean, that's unheard of, but I get, like I said, I get all the unusual cases. So so when the hormones surge and then they plummet, it puts you on a roller coaster, and that's a distress for your body. Your cortisol goes up and cortisol releases blood sugar, but then you have a crash, and then when you try to get energy from processed foods, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, it changes your microbiome. And then some women get prone to yeast infections, and the yeast makes you crave sugar like nobody's business. I mean,
Mm,
and it's pretty common. It's pretty common in perimenopause and menopause that
mm,
you lose the moisture in your vagina and in your urethra, and it impacts bacteria and yeast getting in there, so you get more urinary tract infections. And then when you eat the comfort food, it changes the microbiome in your gut, which, they're the ones who are going to start the cravings too.
interesting,
Yeah.
right? Wow, that is so fascinating. And I think a lot of people are addressing like one of those individual things without maybe looking upstream. And so I would kind of had the thought that cortisol is often the big domino that affects everything else. Would you agree with that, that cortisol is oftentimes like the one thing that shifts all the other hormones and health? Would you say that that's true?
Yes, and I see it all the time because
Mm,
cortisol is your emergency hormone. So when
mm-hmm.
you're in an emergency, you're going to get adrenaline followed by cortisol, and it's going to pump out blood sugar, make your heart race, raise your blood pressure, raise your blood sugar, your cholesterol to bring energy to your body, which when you're sitting around just worrying, that's not what you need, and that's going to all turn into fat. But all your hormones come from cortisol. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it goes from cholesterol to pregnenolone to progesterone, and from there it can go down many pathways. So your body is the emergency alarm went off. So that's not when you're going to do and make the hormones that are about rest, digest, repair, and rejuvenate, or sex hormones, right? So you're not going to make the other hormones at the expense of cortisol, because your alarm signal said it's not time for that now. It's time for we're in a state of urgency and emergency, which mostly make up in our minds, right?
Yeah, totally. I think you said so many important things here that I don't want to go away and that I just want to recap on is that like cortisol is that stress hormone that tells us when we're in an emergency. And for me, like that made such a huge impact on my life, where before when I learned about it as a concept, it was like, okay, cortisol's your stress hormone. It contributes to these things that we talked about. But I got to a place where I was living that, where my body was gaining weight, my labs were showing high blood sugar. And when I went to the doctor, they were like, oh, it's basically like you're in menopause. You have no progesterone, you have like no estrogen, like all your hormones are so low. And they said you're going to need hormone replacement therapy. And I was like, let me see if I can, I was like 29. And I was like, let me see if I can figure this out and give my body some time. And so I did a cortisol test. And sure enough, all day long, my cortisol was off the reference range. Like if there's green, and then there's like yellow is warning, and then red is like you're in extreme danger. Not only was I in the danger zone, but it was like, oh, there's not even a number, you're off the reference range. And what awareness that really brought for me was that sometimes we get so used to living in such a stressful life that it feels normal. And if somebody would have asked me at that time if I was living in a stressed state, I would have said, no, I'm busy, but life is good, but not realizing internally, like you said, your perception is what drives the cortisol, because I thought that life was great and really busy, but actually my nervous system was taking all of that on, is putting me in a state of fight or flight. And I didn't know that like I was holding my breath and my neck was contracted and I could feel my adrenaline, and I was drinking coffee and fasting and all these things that were actually, that I thought was good. I thought I was busy and happy, but I was also like drinking a ton of coffee and fasting and doing all these things. I could feel my adrenaline, but my sex hormones were crashing and my body was gaining weight. And I think I was, that was perpetuating my lack of self-trust with food. I think my cortisol was causing that self-sabotage. I don't know if you want to maybe speak to any of that connection or just that impact that cortisol has on our bodies.
Yeah, it puts you on a wild roller coaster ride of blood sugar swings, which I used to start some of my speeches when people ask me to talk. Do you know anyone who's feeling fat, flabby, flaky, foggy, fatigued, or forgetful? And the room would chuckle and everybody would raise their hand. And, you can relate to that, because it's like, yeah, I guess I do feel that way. And it's cortisol, because the cortisol causes these blood sugar surges and then blood sugar crashes. And then the high blood sugar causes insulin resistance, and both the high cortisol and the high insulin puts fat around your belly. And you know what? You can't fight those hormones. You have to harness them and guide them with your mind. That's really where the mindfulness comes in, checking in with your body, checking in when you want to reach for that extra cup of coffee or that wine, the coffee to get you going, the wine or alcohol to calm you down, the little afternoon sugar pick me up. And by the way, some of the carbs are worse than sugar because they're more compact and they're denser. So, I was shocked to see when there was a nutrition course for doctors, right? So, they say doctors don't know anything about nutrition. I mean, I've been studying it since I'm a kid, but I always want to learn something. And they asked, like, what has a higher glycemic load, a donut or a bagel? Well, it was the bagel. It was the bagel.
Wow.
Because they took like all that donut and crunched it into something denser, so it has more sugar molecules. So it affects other hormones, and it does make for, when you have high blood sugar and high cortisol, your microbiome in the gut is going to change. those little critters in there are more of them than there are cells in your body. And I say, if you have a nice community down there, it's like having a nice community. Everybody
Mm,
talks nice to each other. They get along. They make the beautiful neurotransmitter serotonin, which is your body's natural antidepressant. They make vitamin K, which helps with your bones and with blood clotting. They make biotin, the hair vitamin. They do so much, and they communicate with your brain. More signals go from your gut to your brain than your brain to your gut. So they have a very strong influence on your hormone system, your immune system, and your nervous system. So
mm,
then if you start eating badly and you go for the sugary foods, the processed foods, the alcohol, the caffeine, and then you're under stress and you've got the cortisol, it's almost like a gang moved in there. And they're like, let's take over. And they are nasty. They're
yeah.
nasty. They stop making all the good stuff. Then you get the gas, you get the bloating, you get the skin changes, you get the mood swings, you get the weight gain, and a whole host of other things, and you get the cravings. The microbiome has a lot to do with your cravings.
I think a lot of people don't make that connection and they wonder, why is my microbiome off? How do I repair my gut? How do I repair my gut while not looking at the hormones are influencing the gut balance? And then that gut balance is what's influencing their cravings and their mood and their
Yeah.
serotonin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But your mind, your tells your body what to feel, and then your feelings drive your actions, and your actions drive your results. So that's really why I really wanted to be on this podcast, because that mindfulness, just stopping and taking pause, and before you reach for that, I tell my patients, ask yourself, am I really hungry?
Hmm.
Most people eat because they're stressed, they're bored, they're tired, they have that craving and they don't know where it's coming from.
Mm.
And do they really need it? Are they really hungry? No, no, they don't. No,
Hmm.
it's sometimes it's just habit, and it's not being mindful, and they're not checking in to say, oh, I've been at this computer all day and my neck is hurt. No,
Yeah.
you just keep going. We're on a hamster wheel of do, and we've got that adrenaline. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I've been burnt down many times, right? And now I catch myself better. Like I've been there, right? I've been
Yeah.
there where my cortisol went from high to just drop down low to nothing, when that's when you get the chronic fatigue, the fibromyalgia, brings on autoimmune, frequent infection. You lose your joy for life, and it's sort of like, oh, everything
Yeah.
is flat and gray and dull, and I mean, I can almost diagnose that across the room. You see how a person presents themselves, and that's burnout. That's a little
Yeah.
harder to fix, and that's where mindfulness comes in. And I
Mm.
tell people that's radical self-care. And
Mm.
sometimes self-care is saying no. It's not a bubble bath or all those things are nice, and it's not getting your nails done, or it is setting appropriate boundaries. It is taking care of yourself, putting yourself first,
Mm.
taking things off that to-do list, saying no when you need to rest, you rest, not having this outside whatever, wherever we got this from, that you always have to be doing something at every moment, and you
Yeah.
have to be productive at every moment. Our society thrives on that and feeds on
Yeah.
that,
I think
and
that we
it's not
start to
good.
wear it like a badge of honor,
Yeah,
and it's something that we see that that's where we get our self-worth is from providing, from creating enough things, doing enough things, self-sacrificing. And I just read this thing that really hit me. That was like self-sacrifice we like admire and get a lot of value and self-worth from, but self-sacrifice isn't noble, it's self-neglect. And
yeah,
being able to create boundaries and protecting our energy and giving ourselves stillness is the strongest way to respect ourselves, to truly
exactly.
love and respect ourselves.
Exactly. Because I said something to a dear friend the other day. I said, I don't know how you do it all. This person has her hand in everything, and she's brilliant and just always go giver. And she said, I'm really on the verge of a breakdown. I don't know. I just don't know how I do it either. And it
Yeah.
was like, that was eye-opening because it seemed that she did it all with ease. And it, you know what, we all get into those modes. And this is the whole idea behind this podcast, is to take a step back and reevaluate, like, what am I doing? What do I not have to do? Like,
Mm.
one day I just unsubscribed from everybody's newsletters because I
Yeah.
just I just couldn't, read them all, and then I
Yeah.
couldn't I
Then
couldn't
you feel
clean them all
bad.
out. I do feel
Yes.
bad, but then,
Yeah.
I go back when I want to learn something. I know where to go find them, so I don't have to, read everything and be on everybody's list, and also comment on everybody's posts. And I do it when I can. I do, because I do want to support people, and I do want uh, people to succeed, but
Yeah.
I can't do it at my own expense.
I think it's so beautiful that you look at the core root of not just talking about how do we influence hormones, but getting really real and honest about how is our lives affecting our nervous system, and what, like, how are we creating these conditions for us to always feel behind, or how many newsletters do we subscribe to, or things that we purchase and buy that we don't do, or expectations that we set for ourselves of I should be doing all these things. And I remember when I created the expectation that every day I should meal prep, exercise, meditate, read a book, journal, or not read a whole
Yeah,
book, but
yeah,
like read
yeah.
from a book or whatever. And I would put this list of like, once I become this ideal human, this is like the things that I'll be doing. And I would put it as a list, and I could never quite hit that list. And if I did, I was anxiously like, okay, do the meditation. Okay, did the meditation. And it actually, trying to be better was constantly keeping me in a state of fight or flight, and
Yeah.
how different it has shifted my nervous system to lower my expectations a little bit, to say like,
Hmm.
what is one thing that just feel that I'm doing just because it feels good, not because it makes me worthy, not because it makes me a better human or a healthier human, but truly because it feels good to me and my body, and it's going to help my nervous system. And like, something I've been focusing on lately is I notice when my thoughts run away from me, my nervous system will get kind of triggered, and I feel that cortisol and that adrenaline come in. But if I just kind of like notice my thoughts and not let it impact my body, it's like life can still happen without it putting me in a state of fight or flight. But I have
Yes.
to be slow and consciously aware of that, because I know a lot of people will be listening and saying, "That's great. I hear you that we shouldn't be stressed, but I have work, I have kids, I have a life." And some things that have been helpful for me is to shift the way that my body receives all the things that are happening in my
Yes.
life. One of my mentors, he said to me, because when I was really anxious and had all this stress, he said, "I want you to be like a Zen window washer." Because I was like, how can I slow down my life? I am stressed. I have all this going on. And he said, "I want your hands to move quickly on the outside, but you're calm and centered on the inside." And I never forgot that like
That
life
is,
can keep moving on, but I stay centered and calm and not let it put me in
yeah.
a state of fight or flight, you know?
That is beautiful. I love that. The Zen window washer. I'm gonna use that.
Because
I'm gonna
sometimes
use
we
that for
like,
sure.
we can't
Yeah.
change, we can't always get rid, you're not
Yeah.
gonna like be like, you know what, I'm stressed, I'm gonna get rid of my kids, I'm gonna get, like, you actually got to the point to where you were like, I actually need to stop my career for right now. It
Yeah.
was so bad. And some people get to that place, and some people are like, I literally can't do that. But how noticing inward in your body, how that one thing could completely change the rest of your hormones. And um, yeah, and go ahead.
The interesting thing was, I tell my patients, don't let the hormones speak. And the minute I found the right person and I went on progesterone, it was like all the same stressors were there, but it was,
Mm,
I slept. I feel this sense of calm. I feel like myself again. That's exactly what my
mm,
patients tell me. I feel like myself again. And then all the noise out there, I was able to just sort through and focus on what was most important in that moment, right?
mm,
Instead of like looking at the whole world crashing down on me. And that's really what helped me understand the power the power of hormones. And I say perimenopause is like being in a rowboat in rough seas with no oars. You're just bounced around and your moods are all over, and you don't know what to do first, and then you have this fire to put out and that fire to put out, and then you're irritable. And then what happens is whatever you say, no matter if you choose the very right word coming from a place of love, it comes out irritable, and people think you're irritated at them, and it really damages relationships. Luckily my close friend said, look, your personality has changed. So it was sort of that wake up call. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It did change, and
Yeah.
it made me get the help that I needed.
Yeah, I think that this awareness of this and how it impacts our lives is like going to be life changing for so many people now. And I remember my mom talking about how she was juggling the changes with perimenopause at the same time, kind of going through a divorce. And not that my mom's divorce was because of perimenopause, but I remember her saying to me, we didn't know about hormones. And
Yeah.
I was just like in this overwhelm and all of these feelings. And it was like I could go to a doctor and they're just like, lady, you got kids, you got a life, you take a
Yeah.
nap, and now how life-changing that could be for so many women to understand how hormones can play such a difference in the quality of life. Can you kind of break down like a little bit of a difference where somebody could maybe get clues of like what does cortisol feel like in the body and what does that do versus like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, some of those different hormones, why
Sure.
they're all important?
High cortisol, you feel wired and tired. You're running on that adrenaline, and you after a while you start noticing the weight gain around the belly. It's there's overlap, so there's no distinct thing. You feel like you're on a treadmill having to work hard, and you might notice palpitations, you might notice your heart rate going up, you might notice blood pressure going up, lipids going up. You're not going to necessarily feel that, but that wired and tired feeling where like you're tired and you're laying down to go to bed and you just can't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's and then you usually crave sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So when you cross that line to go from stressed out when cortisol is high to burnout when cortisol is low, that's when you have the aches, the pains, the infection, this lack of joy. They call it anhedonia. Nothing makes me happy anymore. The things that used to make me happy don't make me happy. And you crave salt and sugar, right? So during perimenopause, we make estrogen. The problem is it goes all over the place. It goes from high to low. In fact, it's a time when they call estrogen dominance, where estrogen could be high, it could be normal, it could be low, but you don't ovulate enough. Or when you do ovulate, the ovaries are not producing enough of the calming progesterone to balance it. So think of estrogen dominance like PMS. So it's perimenopause is sort of the opposite of puberty. Puberty, your hormones are ramping up. Perimenopause, they're ramping down. So estrogen dominance, it's the hormone of energy and growth. So too much energy is going to feel like anxiety, irritability, impatience, insomnia. Your breasts start to grow. They become tender. You might have cysts. You might have your uterine lining grow, and you might have bleeding, heavy bleeding, irregular bleeding. You might have spotting in between. The weight gain for estrogen is hips, breasts, hips, and thighs. That weight gain for cortisol is the belly. But understand, when your hormones are all over the place,
Yeah.
it's a stressor, and stress is physical, emotional, chemical. It's a chemical distress, so it's also hitting upon cortisol. So you both get the saddlebags and the belly
And yeah.
fat. And that's what estrogen dominance feels like. And
Yeah.
that's really could be too much estrogen, and be careful with plastics and chemicals that act like estrogen.
Can you
Because,
just explain that a little bit more?
yes, there are other things that stimulate the estrogen receptor. So maybe you have the mailman ringing your bell and it's friendly. You open the door, it gives you a nice package, maybe you won a prize, right? And it's good. It's good. You want that kind of receptor, right? But then you've got the robber who's going to come in and rob your house. So this is what happens when you have a chemical that acts like estrogen, but it's really not estrogen. And they call them obesogens because they increase your ability to gain weight. They make you feel, they don't make you feel the good things about estrogen. They only make you feel the bad things. Like they mess with your immune system, your hormone system, and your nervous system. They can cause cancer. They can increase your, decrease your immune response or stimulate your immune response and make you, gain weight and disrupt your hormones. So things, I call them the P's: plastics, parabens, phthalates. Parabens and phthalates are found in a lot of your personal care products, so that's another P, and also in your cleaning products. So I urge people to start, as you start running out of different products, get the app from EWG.org, the Environmental Working Group. You can scan the barcodes of things and find a safer product. I remember the days when they were scarce and expensive. Now they're everywhere. They're everywhere. You can find clean products everywhere now, and they're not so expensive. And your body will thank you for this, because those toxins, and the toxins are in the air, the soil, the water. And just think, your skin is the mouth, is just like your mouth. Whatever you put on your skin, you're getting in. You don't think of it that way, but it is. So reducing those toxins goes a long way. And you can feel some of the signs of estrogen dominance, and I can measure it, and I'm saying, but the estrogen is good or it's low. It's because of these toxins.
Oh, that's so interesting. So your estrogen could look normal on lab levels because your lab estrogen is, but you actually have all these other toxins that are mimicking estrogen, messing
Yes.
up the feeling of your hormones. And so your labs look normal, but you actually have these obesogens that are impacting how your estrogen
Yeah.
feels in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And then I also tell people, I'm going to be known as the poop doctor. Not that I really want to be, but
Let's hear
if
it.
you don't poop logs and snakes every day, it's like flushing a backed up toilet. Whatever you're trying to get rid of, your liver is going to break down those estrogens and all these other toxins. It's going to bind to your bile, which is going to try to get rid of it. But then these nasty little microbiome, the nasty ones, are going to just take it off. And you know what? It's sitting in there if you're not moving your bowels, and it's just going to get reabsorbed. And it's another reason why women who said, "Oh, I failed hormones," or "they made me fat," or "they did that." No, it wasn't that. First question I ask whenever somebody has a problem: how are you moving your bowels? How are your bowel moves? Oh, they're normal. How often do you go? Oh, every 2 or 3 days. What do they look like? Oh, maybe they're little balls. No, 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 no. You have
Yeah.
to poop logs and snakes every
Hmm.
day. And some woman said to me, "It's changed my life." Because you know what?
Yeah.
Because you kept reabsorbing those toxins that gave you the brain fog, that made you tired, that made you gain weight, that made you feel irritable, that disrupted your hormone system, your immune system, and your nervous system. So all those detox channels have to be open.
Yes.
And that's how you get that, and other things is how you get rid of those estrogen dominance.
Okay.
Now,
Do you have a couple little strategies for somebody who's like, oh yeah, that's my first thing is that I'm definitely constipated. Do you have like a go-to that helps people get started
yeah,
there?
magnesium citrate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fiber does so many good things. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God. So many good things, fiber. But the thing with magnesium and fiber, you have to start low and go slow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you go, "Oh, I'm going to have all this," you're going to get gas and bloating and cramps. And then you'll say, "I'm never going to do this again." So I say, just take baby steps. It'll happen. Then you drink a lot of water, you exercise. If that doesn't work, there are some motility activators that contain aloe and ginger. So there's a stepwise approach, but most people do very well with adding some magnesium and fiber just gradually increasing, getting movement and water, and it works for most people. And then I also sometimes add probiotics, but those two, three things or four things are the basis: movement, water, fiber, magnesium.
Cool. So those
Yeah.
are some signs of your body has maybe a little too much estrogen and things like the plastics and phthalates and those that could be contributing to the estrogen dominance, getting rid of those and then working it, making sure that you're pooping every day. If not, you need some magnesium, water, more fiber, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, got that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay,
You
okay,
got it.
cool. So
Yeah,
maybe let's
perfect.
move on to the next hormone. What are some other clues that your body tells you that
So low estrogen is
mm,
hot flashes, night
mm,
sweats, dry eyes, dry skin, dry vagina, poor memory. You can still have some of those symptoms in perimenopause, but it's a little different. My women tell me they totally feel the shift, and you get more aches and pains, and you still have that. I'm not sleeping. I'm tired. I'm gaining weight. It's a libido killer. And it's really hard because, having intercourse is really difficult because the vagina's like sandpaper and it's painful, and women get more urinary tract infections and they have urine leakage, and then they start sagging and the collagen
mm,
is breaking down and they notice more wrinkles. So that's when, SOS, you need some estrogen and progesterone. I always give them, and there's a myth that if you don't have a uterus, you don't need progesterone. And that is absolutely not true.
mm,
Because the women who come to me after having had a hysterectomy on just estrogen, they come in with the symptoms of estrogen dominance because they don't have the progesterone to balance it. So it's like having a car with just a gas pedal and no brake. Estrogen's the gas pedal. It's going to get you going, but you can't stop. The progesterone's the brake. It calms you down. And women tell me when they take progesterone, they get the best sleep of their life.
mm,
The best sleep of their life. And then they feel like themselves again, right? They have to be balanced. Those hormones have to be balanced. And everybody's balance is a little bit different. The way you absorb, the way you eliminate, the way you process. So that's why I say, you have to take care of your liver. You have to poop every day. You have to exercise and open up all those detox channels, hydrate, sweat. All of that is really important for overall health. It's not just for your hormones.
mm-hmm.
And then the other biggie is testosterone. People are always asking me about that. And I just try not to overtreat people because most times when you give estrogen, progesterone, the libido comes back, the woman feels juicy, they feel happy, they feel like themselves again. But some women, these hormones are all act on your brain and your nervous system. And women who say, I have no I lost my self esteem and my self confidence, and I'm more sensitive. Things that never bothered me before bother me now, and I have no libido. That's when I really look to testosterone, right? Because testosterone makes you really feel powerful and very it's a hormone of well-being. And I never forgot when, an OBGYN gave me testosterone. And then, you're going to laugh about this, but I was on this testosterone and it's like, wow, nothing bothers me. Oh, the hell with this. I don't care about that. And I'm looking at men go by, he looks good. It was so different from my personality. And I thought, oh, this feels powerful, but it does, this is not normal for me. And I immediately got my labs drawn and I stopped it. And it was, yeah, it was a little too high. And then I gave it to, there was a patient of mine who I used to work with her and I knew her, and she was with dating somebody for many years, and he was sort of like on the fence. He wouldn't marry her. And I gave her testosterone, and she said, "Oh, I confronted him and I said, you better you make a commitment or what?" And then she came back and I said, It's a little too high, but it did its job." Stop, right? Isn't that the best story?
Hilarious.
Yeah, so you know you can overdo it, but
Yes.
and I don't necessarily recommend that,
Yes.
but it gives you a sense of well-being. So there's a time and a place to use it, and some women turn testosterone into something much stronger where they're gonna get like I'm Mediterranean, so I get the chin hairs and the little mustache and lose a little hair here. And there are things to counterbalance that, or you just lower the dose, or just, there's always that chance. So when I say to women, there's a possibility of having hair loss and you just stop it and it comes back, they say no. I'm not going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah,
they
and
don't
I
know.
think that it's something too that like hormones are becoming more popular, that people are just kind of looking to, oh, somebody can help me with this, but really what truly an art it is to
It is not.
understand how the body's responding and to not look at one hormone in isolation, but to see
Yeah.
them as like an orchestra where they're all playing together. They all
Yes.
play an important piece, and you can't have the violin that's taking over the orchestra
That's right.
dominating, and you'll be a mess. So
Yeah, and that's why I'm writing the book, because if
you
you're
see
if you're
those
putting the
mistakes.
hormones in bad soil, you have somebody sedentary, overweight, eating inflammatory foods, they're not pooping, they're not hydrating, they're eating the wrong things, they're not going to do as well. So
Yeah.
I usually have people do a detoxification, a 2-week detox and elimination, and decrease the inflammation to prepare the soil for
Mm.
blossoming hormones, right?
I think that that's so important because sometimes we look at those things as like, if I just take hormones and that will fix everything. And you make it seem like so much sense of where you can't just slap on the hormones. Your
That's right.
liver needs to be detoxing, your gut needs to be moving the hormones through. From that detox perspective, you need to be caring for your body, or else the hormones might not work as well. Like, do you see that
Exactly.
happening, that women who are not addressing those things are then having issues with the hormones?
Later on, yeah, they do, because they're like, I don't want all that. I just need the hormones. I eat healthy. Well, they think they eat healthy. They might
Mm-hmm.
not eat. They eat what the marketers say are healthy. It may
Sure.
not be. We're brainwashed. Milk is good food, and
Mm-hmm.
the Cheerios later, lowers your cholesterol and all this other stuff. It's a little bit of a stretch on the truth, but we've been brainwashed, and what's healthy for one is not necessarily healthy for another. Or even something as healthy as yogurt, it's loaded with sugar. I mean, unless you're going to buy the plain yogurt, it's loaded with sugar. And granola, you might as well have a dessert.
Mm-hmm.
So people think they're eating healthy, and then once we teach them how to eat for their body, it's life changing. And I used to just let people choose to do it or not do it. And then I always found down the road, they felt good initially. And then down the road, they're like, but this isn't working and that isn't working. I said, one woman said to me, Dr. Maida, you've been trying to get me to do this for 15 years. I can't believe how good I feel. I always thought I ate healthy, and I cook everything at home and I eat whole food, and I learned something. And I feel so good, and thank you. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting hearing you talk about all the different roles that the hormones play. And it's like, I think about cortisol and how that drives our cravings and how that fluctuates our energy from anywhere from anxiety to exhaustion, and how oftentimes we don't address cravings as being maybe a cortisol problem or energy as being a cortisol problem. And then we look at estrogen, and you talk about weight gain and changes in our skin and all the other things that you talked about. And we don't really look at it as, could this be an estrogen problem? And then things like progesterone, and when you can't sleep at night and you have anxiety and you're tossing and turning, and we might take a sleep medication to help with sleep, but we're not really looking at maybe it's the progesterone, or how all these things, even testosterone. I know that like some people have passions and they want to create and they want to start a business, or do things with their life, but if their testosterone is tanked, they're not going to have motivation and drive and excitement, or how that could affect their libido and how that impacts their relationship or their marriage, and how all of these hormones, I feel like, address actually a really big part of like the problems that we see, whether it's relationship issues, weight issues, sleep issues, cravings. And rarely does anyone say this might be hormones for
Yeah.
all of these things.
Yeah. Yes, and that's where I'm happy. There's more talk about this now,
Yeah.
and I mean I want to raise awareness. This is why I'm here, and
Mhm.
this is why I'm writing a book, and this is my life's work because I see too many people suffering in silence. But I say hormones control you, but you control your hormones, and I want people to understand that what you eat, what you drink, how much you sleep, how much you exercise, the stress you're under, the toxins you're exposed to, all affect your hormones. And you improve that, you can improve your hormones.
Mhm.
Not, but when you're in menopause or perimenopause, it will take the edge off. And some people don't suffer very much through it,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not a big fan of just throwing hormones at everybody. I want them to get the foundations right first, and then you make a choice, right?
Yeah.
But when the ovaries are retired, they're retired, right?
Yeah.
And
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I think some people might still be understanding, like, well, how do I know when I'm in perimenopause? And when would you do hormone replacement? When would you not do hormone replacement? Because when I was like 29 and my hormones were tanked, my doctor said, you're going to need hormone replacement therapy. And I said, let me work on it myself. And I changed my stress and I changed my lifestyle, and my hormones normalized. And um, so I'm curious if you could speak to that. Like, at what stages would someone need to consider hormone replacement, and when can they do other things, and what kind of like lifestyle things can they do to keep healthy,
sure.
balanced
I,
hormones?
I First of all, it's age, right?
Yeah.
Perimenopause for most women begins somewhere in their 40s. I've had people began in their 30s. So I remember you just said you were 29, your hormones tanked. It's unlikely. I mean, I've had some women with primary ovarian failure at that age, but first we always try the lifestyle first. We look at the cortisol. You eat a healthy Mediterranean style diet, which is, low in saturated fat, more omega-3 fats. I call them fats that flow because it's anything that can be made into an oil. So like fish, olives, avocado, nuts, and any of their oils, whole grains. And I tell people, gluten-free is sometimes like sugar. So just be careful because you replace gluten with gluten-free and it's all starch and it's like that bagel that has a high glycemic load. So just be mindful of that and have, whole grains, like buckwheat or millet or something very hearty that's stone ground, that's not made into a fine flour. But I mostly like people to have quality protein, fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, healthy oils, right? And then fiber. And there's, a whole list of fiber. Like I was blown away when I learned that avocados are full of fiber. I'm like, really? I love
Yeah.
avocados, right? And same thing with sweet potatoes. Pears are very high in fiber, berries. All these things are superfoods. They're really good for you. You need the fiber. Remember that estrogen dominance. You don't want to be, irritable, right?
Yes.
So that first I always start with diet, then, live in the circadian rhythm. Get up in the morning, get light in the morning, and at night, dim the lights, block blue light, go into a more relaxed state. You don't want to eat late or snack late because it's going to change the hormones that help you sleep, right? So sleep is extremely important for rejuvenation, repair. Um, and then you want to start looking at the toxins. I made my husband throw away this Teflon pan. I couldn't stand it in the house.
Hmm.
No matter what no matter what I would say to him, it's poison, right?
Yep.
So
Totally.
I didn't want to throw it out, but I just bought a new pan, put it next to it, said,
Yeah.
this other pan has to go, and he threw it out.
Yeah, I'm the
So,
same. I'm a cookware snob for sure.
yeah, I am
I'm like
too.
stainless. I'm a stainless steel girl.
I'm a stainless steel. Now I have the carbon steel.
Okay.
I have the carbon steel. So, because sometimes, the stainless, it sticks, but I mostly have stainless steel. So, so that what you eat, what you drink. So alcohol is, you want that, you want to get rid of the belly fat.
Hmm.
Sorry, ladies. We just don't, when you start getting into perimenopause and menopause, first of all, we're not born with the same chemistry as men to detoxify alcohol very well. And the yeast love alcohol, and it's just going to go to belly fat. So what you drink is important, and get your calories from food, not drinks, right?
Hmm.
Sodas are, again, another poison, and these natural flavors
Hmm.
or artificial sweeteners, they're awful. They're awful
Hmm.
for you. So find other ways, even my husband now, who he buys the things infused with some flavor, but real juice, right? Just a tiny bit. Juice is a sugar bomb. Um, so what you eat, what you drink, how much you sleep, the exercise, you've got to move, because
Hmm.
that opens up the detox channels. You detox through your skin, through sweating, through your breath, through heavy breathing. You have to hydrate, so that makes your kidneys work better. That gets the bowels moving. It gets the lymph flowing. It's a big way to detoxify, to build muscle, which you start to lose, right? You start to lose it in once you hit your 20s, you start to lose muscle. But
Mm.
when you start to know when you're in perimenopause is when women just say something changed, and I don't feel like myself anymore.
Is there a
Yeah,
way to like quote unquote diagnose perimenopause, or is it just symptom based?
I do two different blood tests, 10 days apart, because I will look at the difference between estrogen and progesterone. And generally, if you catch estrogen at its peak, progesterone should be at its peak. And when they're not the right balance, that's a sign of perimenopause. But
Mm.
that's the signals are, you start to gain weight, your periods may or may not become irregular, or you start getting PMSy again, right? Or you get acne, or you get you're not sleeping as well. You can get hot flashes in perimenopause. And I like to start hormones early, and I like people to get their bone density scan done early. By the time you're 65, you've already lost your bone.
Where can they do that at?
You can actually, if you can get a prescription from a doctor and you pay cash, because insurance is not going to cover it until you're 65 after you've lost a lot of your bone, right? So
Hmm.
it's less than $100 in most places. You get the prescription, you go to your local radiology center and say, I want to pay cash. You ask them for the cash price, and you can do that, or something called an echo light. It's non-radiation, it's an ultrasound, and it will look at your bone density and the bone quality, bone
Hmm.
fragility. That's more expensive, and it's not covered by insurance, but that's available to you even without a prescription. So you can go, a lot of the OsteoStrong places have it, but if you just go Echolite, ECHOLITE.com, you may find a place near you, because you lose 20% of your bone in perimenopause.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, 20%. It starts much earlier. People think it's only estrogen. No. If you have PCOS, or what they call anovulatory cycles, there are some women who just their periods were never regular, and their periods are very spread out. They're not ovulating. You need progesterone to build bone.
Mm.
And that's really what was shocking. Again, as I'm always researching, to know that 20% of your bone is lost in perimenopause. And
Wow.
every study that comes out about hormone replacement is the earlier you start, the better. So perimenopause is an age thing, and something has changed, whether it's your periods, your mood, your weight, your sleep. Hot flashes are not just estrogen, they're any fluctuating hormones. So when you know something like that has changed, if you have a 28-day cycle, I generally have somebody have their hormones drawn day 19 to 22. People with shorter cycles, I have them 16 to 19. People whose cycles are irregular, I have them do it when they're having either PMS symptoms or just do two different blood draws 10 days apart.
Mhm.
And that will tell me because, I've had people, they've come to me and they like, their hormones are perfect, but they have every raging symptom. And I said, you know what, was that a good period that month?
Mhm.
Yeah. 1 month you might ovulate, right? And you
Wow.
might make enough, but it's not consistent enough. And
Yeah.
then in menopause, so in perimenopause, you're making estrogen, and estrogen actually goes higher in perimenopause, which is why you get that the rage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but in menopause, the estrogen drops, and that's really where things dry out, and the mind gets even more cloudy. You're searching for words like what's that name? That thingamajig, right?
Yeah.
That thingy, right? So
So that's
then
hormones.
that's
That's a sign of
hormones.
hormones there.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
But there are 70 symptoms, so they can affect your brain. There's a lot: anxiety,
Mhm.
depression, irritability, rage. Uh, you can get bone and joint aches and frozen shoulder in your gut. You get gas, you get bloating, cardiovascular, your lipids start to go up. We all know the hormonal changes with the belly fat and the saddlebags and the skin wrinkling, and there's also oral changes. People start losing teeth, their mouth gets dry, they may have more infections because the oral microbiome protects when you breathe in bacteria from getting in, and if you don't have the right microbiome, because that your whole microbiome from your mouth down to your anus changes, and they do a lot of good if it's the right one, but if you start losing that,
And
you
so,
have
so hormone
respiratory infections.
replacement can help protect from those things. I mean,
Yeah,
I know eventually we're gonna get wrinkles and things are gonna
yeah,
sag, but let's say, so
it
what
slows
I'm
it.
hearing, what I'm
Yeah.
hearing is that in the years before perimenopause, we want to do those lifestyle things to keep hormones healthy and in balance, like the
Yeah.
stress and the exercise and those healthy food choices that you mentioned, the healthy fats, the good proteins, lots of fiber,
Mhm.
lots of water, and then continuing those healthy habits. But as we transition into perimenopause and menopause, that's where we can consider hormone replacement, which can help combat the things that you're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, it's going to slow it. I mean, look, I'm aging, but I went to my 50th high school reunion,
Oh
and
my gosh.
with one of my patients who's, she was running it, and we looked at each other and we said, "Oh my God, we look so much younger," and
Yes.
look, I'm older and I accept that, but I know for my age, I'm better than most. And I
Hmm.
don't mean to brag in any way, shape, or form. It's not about that. It's about, being a role model. I'm not perfect either. I'm not. And I tell people, you're never going to be perfect. Go for progress, not perfection. And it's just going to slow the process. It's not going to stop it, but it's going to slow it. And everyone in my family by this age was on several medications and had big issues. I don't. God has a sense of humor because if it's metabolic, I can fix it. I get the orthopedic issues.
That's funny.
Yeah, I can't
Uh,
fix that myself, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to ask one more question just because I'm curious what your answer would be. And I know a lot of people, I get this question all the time with hormones and things like safety and risks, and especially if there's been a family history of like breast cancer, things like that. Is that something you can share your perspectives
Sure.
on?
Yes, I mean, I've been doing this for well over 30 years. I was there before giving hormones before the Women's Health Initiative. And the Women's Health Initiative was sort of hijacked by the press. It was sort of a viral misinformation. The press made the decision, not the scientists who were analyzing the data. They didn't even get a chance to.
Well, explain what the Women's Health Initiative is. So
Right. So,
to
so the
get
Women's
people
Health
up there.
Initiative was the major study to look to see if hormones could help with chronic diseases, right? Like especially cardiovascular, which is the cardiovascular is the number one killer in women, right? And What they found is there was an increased risk, the press, without analyzing it and without really looking at the statistical analysis, it increased the risk of cardiovascular disease like heart attack and stroke and breast cancer. Went viral, they didn't analyze it properly, and to this day, this is over 25 years later, they still are quoting that study because it was big, right? These women were average age was 63, more than 10 years past menopause. So the ship has sailed, right? They've already had cardiovascular issues. They already had bone loss. They already had some issues with their brain. They already had problems, right? And they gave them high dose synthetic hormones that were oral. So fast forward, even 2017, the principal investigator came out with a study that it just never took off. This was not right. They didn't do the right analysis. There were only 8 more cases of breast cancer. But when they looked at it, the younger women had a decreased risk of breast cancer if they were on estrogen alone. They did other studies that looked at bioidentical progesterone, and that was safer. Synthetic progestins, which are found in all the birth control pills, by the way, is what increased the risk of breast cancer. Cardiovascular disease, the number one killer in women, the reason why they got it is because when you take oral estrogen, it forms clots. But we give estrogen through the skin. All the studies show the risk of clots is negligible. Even now they came up with people with clotting disorders like Factor-Leiden, they can still take progesterone through estrogen through the skin. So we know now estrogen does not cause breast cancer. Bioidentical progesterone is safer. We do know in terms of cardiovascular disease, if you're the best time to take it is under the age of 60, within 10 years of menopause. However, I get all the questions. What if I'm older? What if I'm past 10 years? You can still take it. It's just that you may not get all of the brain benefits and all of the cardiovascular benefits. You will get the bone benefits. You will get the other benefits of, not having the urinary tract infection, having more, changing your microbiome, doing all the other good things, and it actually decreases the risk of different kind of gastric cancers, esophageal and colon and stomach cancer, right? And lung cancer. It decreases those risks. It helps your bones. It helps your brain. It helps lower your lipids, relax the coronary arteries. The North American Menopause Society and 20 other organizations now say the benefits outweigh the risks.
Yeah, I know I don't feel like the expert to speak to it, but I also thought it was very interesting when I heard a hormone doctor say that if the estrogen was the cause of breast cancer, then the highest rates of breast cancer would be in puberty when estrogen is the highest. And that made a lot of sense to me. I was like, that seems like that would make a lot of sense.
And the interesting thing was there was just a paper that just came out, I think it was October 7th, that they're reconsidering. I don't give hormones to anyone who has a history of breast cancer.
Okay.
Because I don't know enough about it, right? And I will only do what I feel is most safe. I'm never going to,
That's
some people
great.
beg me for hormones and sometimes I have to say no. If they have liver disease, if they had a pulmonary embolism, if they have breast cancer or a history of breast cancer. So, or, those are my top 3 where I say no. But they're now considering giving women who've had a history of breast cancer hormones based on their receptor positivity. And there are different types of breast cancer and different types of receptors. And they realize that not being on hormones is a big risk for the number one killer, cardiovascular disease, the number one cause of disability, which is osteoporosis, and another big cause of disability, which is dementia. So they're now considering in certain cases to be able to give hormones to women who've had a history of breast cancer. So I refer to people who know that. I mean, I know breast surgeons and I know other hormone doctors who feel comfortable with that. And you know what? There's no need to suffer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dr. Lorraine, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and your wisdom. And I can tell that You have been in this for so long, and
Yeah.
I hope to stay in your life for a long time so you can help me, as I transition through the next decades of my life with my hormones. And what are all the different ways that you support people and help them if they want to explore their hormones?
Well, I have two sites. One is my medical site, Vibrance for Life, where I'm licensed in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Arizona. And then my other is because people can get hormones like a vending machine now online through different places where they just send in a questionnaire and get a hormone dispense. I want people to be able to take care of all the other things. So I have do-it-yourself courses and I do some programs, live programs several times a year. And we have group coaching and individual coaching on the feelgoodagaininstitute.com. But you have to put the and institute after it because otherwise you get drug rehab center. And that's not what we are.
So
The
thefeelgoodinstitute.com.
Feel Good Again
Feel Good Again Institute.
Institute.com. You see, I made the name too long.
I know I did the same thing. The Master of Mindfulness Institute is too long as well, but
Yeah.
it's still a great name.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'll leave all the links and ways to contact you and ways that people can learn from your courses and things. And thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.